Ascaris lumbricoids. What we have seen in the previous video, let us take a recap. Ascaris lumbricoids, these are the Ascaris lumbricoids. They are roundworms. They are parasites. They are helminths. So they are parasites. They are helminth. The most common human helminth. It is under helminth. It comes under nematodes. It's the largest nematode infecting humans. Its habitat is the small intestine. It is actually, the common name is roundworm. Okay, and it is present a lot in lot of people. Ascaris lumbricoids, the morphology is that the male is smaller than female. It has in the posterior end a curved hook with two copulatory spicules. Female is longer, bigger. The posterior end of female is going to be conical and what is the other word? Conical and straight. The female has a vulvar waist. Here you can see the vulvar waist. The female has a vulvar waist. Okay. Morphology of the eggs, we saw the unfertilized eggs versus the fertilized eggs. The unfertilized egg, basically you cannot see anything. They're all full of granules. Fertilized one, you can see a large unsegmented ovum inside. Can you see it? Large unsegmented ovum, this one. Okay. So then the unfertilized one is actually going to have very thin, what do you say, border is it? What is it called? Thinner, irregular mammillated coat it is going to have, and it is going to have an atrophied ovum, right? It has atrophied ovum because it's not fertilized. It's elliptical, it's longer. Now the fertilized ones are bile stained, they are saying. Okay. The fertilized one, they are bile stained. If this is not bile stained, then shouldn't this change this color? Okay. Anyways, moving on. Coming to the life cycle and pathogenesis, we saw that man is the natural host. There is no intermediate host. It will live in the soil. For several years, it can live in the soil. The infective form is the embryonated egg, which contains the rhabditiform larva. Okay. So in the soil itself, it will molt twice, correct? The soil also, it molts twice. Now look at this. This is the life cycle pathogenesis. So basically, let's start here. The man eats the vegetable which is contaminated with the rhabditiform larva. Okay, this rhabditiform larva he eats, it goes to his duodenum. There it will undergo, it will come out, this larva, and it is very actively motile larva. What it will do? It will burrow into the duodenum, into the mucosa. It will burrow. It will go to the blood. Through blood, it will reach the portal vein. Through portal vein, it will reach the liver. From liver, it will reach the blood supply. It will go back to the heart. From heart, it will go to the lung. In lung, it will stay for so many days. There, it will do 2 molds again. It will grow nicely in the lung. And then it will ascend upwards into the trachea. Then it makes us swallow it. We swallow the larva. Then the larva again reaches the intestine, where it will develop into an adult form. The adult form, so I'm guessing here this man got infected with a female and a male rhabditiform larva. Now both of them reach here. There is one female, one male, and then they are going to copulate. When they copulate, the gravid female will release the eggs. They can release unfertilized eggs or fertilized eggs. Remember, these adult forms, they can survive for 1 to 2 years. Okay, their lifespan is 1 to 2 years. So then you have this unfertilized egg and the fertilized egg. So unfertilized egg, you can see the granules, correct? You can see the granules here. And in fertilized egg, you can see the large unsegmented ovum. This, in the feces of this guy, there are a lot of such fertilized eggs, right? So these fertilized eggs, what happen? They will undergo 2 molds and become a rhabditiform larva. Okay, now this rhabditiform larva is the infective form, then the man will consume it. So this is the cycle in the soil, and that is the cycle in the man. So this is the life cycle and pathogenicity. Okay. So now let us move on to the clinical features. Okay. Clinical features of Ascaris lumbricoides. The disease is called as ascariasis. The symptoms due to migrating larva and symptoms due to adult larva. Let us look at both of them. Because of migrating larva, there can be allergic reaction. Okay. And there can be Ascaris pneumonia, which is characterized by low-grade fever, dry cough, asthmatic wheezing, urticaria, eosinophilia moteled lung infiltration, and the chest radiograph. The chest radiograph, that is X-ray, you can see the moteled lung infiltration. Okay. The sputum is going to be blood tinged and may contain charcot laden crystals. Even the sputum will have blood tinge and charcot laden crystals. Okay. These are important words that you should write in the exam. Pneumonia means there will be fever, then asthmatic wheezing, etc. Right? Eosinophilia, mottled lung, eosinophilia. All these words you should write in the exam. Okay. Cough will be there, dry cough. But then they are saying sputum here. Then this condition where, the larva may occasionally be found in sputum, they are often seen in gastric wash. Whatever, this is Loeffler syndrome. Okay. Loeffler syndrome, you should remember. Then what happens? These are all because of the migrating larva. Okay. These clinical features are generally, they are clear in 1 to 2 weeks. It may be severe and it may even be fatal. Loeffler syndrome can be caused by hypersensitivity to other agents. Moving on to the symptoms due to the adult worm. Due to the adult worm, what can happen? Okay, so due to the adult worm, clinical manifestations due to adult worm, they vary from asymptomatic infection to severe infection to even fatal consequences. Okay. So here always you remember it can be asymptomatic to severe to fatal. Okay. Anything can happen. Now coming to this asymptomatic infection. In asymptomatic infection, what will happen? Generally seen in mild infected cases. Okay. The pathologic effects. Now let us move on to from asymptomatic over. Pathologic effects which when present are caused by spoliative action, toxic action, mechanical action and wandering effects. So they are telling here because of spoliative, that is robbing type of action. So those parasites, they rob us of our proteins and vitamin E. Okay, spoliative action will be there. So usually seen when the worm's burden is heavy, the worms may be present in enormous numbers, exceeding even 500, occupying large part of the intestinal tract. They interfere with the proper digestion and absorption of food. Ascaris may contribute to protein energy malnutrition and vitamin A deficiency. Patients, they have loss of appetite and the list, it's a long list. Abnormalities of jejunal mucosa are often present, including broadening and shortening of villi, elongation of crypts. So all these intestinal problems will be there. Okay. Let's just move on to the next effect here, toxic effect. Toxic effect due to the hypersensitivity to the worm antigens. Okay, hypersensitivity to the worm antigens. So they will manifest as fever, urticaria, angioneurotic edema, wheezing, conjunctivitis. Okay. The person look at this, angioneuritic edema. These are more often seen in persons who come in contact with the worms occupationally, as in laboratory technicians, etc. Okay, so these are toxic effects. Then mechanical effects. Mechanical effects are like, you can see here, intestinal obstruction. They are the most important manifestations. Mechanical effects can be due to masses of worms causing luminal occlusion, or even a single worm infiltration into a vital area. So, the adult worm, what it will do, it will live in the upper part of the small intestine, okay, and they'll maintain their position there. And then what will happen due to, they'll stimulate reflex peristalsis, causing recurrent and often severe colicky pain in the abdomen. So they'll cause some colicky pain in the abdomen. Just look at this. So what obviously these worms do, the worms may be clumped together into a mass, filling the lumen, leading to volvulus intussusception, intestinal obstruction, and intestinal perforation. So what they are saying is, what is volvulus? The intestine loops, okay? The loop of intestine twists around itself. Then coming to ectopic ascariasis, that is wanderlust. The worms are restless wanderers, apparently showing great inquisitiveness. So they want to explore our body. They tend to probe and insinuate themselves into the aperture they find on the way. So what they will do, when the host is ill and the temperature is above 39 degrees centigrade, the male worm is more responsive to illness. Okay, the worm will wander everywhere, up and down the gut. It will enter the biliary tract, pancreatic duct. It will cause acute biliary obstruction, pancreatitis. It will enter the liver. This male it is just moving. Especially when male worms, okay, when the host has fever, if host is febrile, okay, greater than 39 degrees centigrade, male worms especially, they like to wander. They reach the pancreas, they reach the biliary tract, they cause obstruction, pancreatitis, then they move to esophagus. They come out through nose or mouth. Yuck. Nose or mouth they can come out. They go to trachea. They go to lung. They go to appendix. They cause obstructive appendicitis. It may lead to peritonitis when it perforates the intestine. Generally at weak spots such as the typhoid or tuberculous ulcers. So whenever there is ulcer, if there is ulcer, then they go to peritonitis. Okay, they go to the peritoneum. Okay. So this tendency makes preoperative deworming necessary before any gastrointestinal surgery in endemic areas. The wandering worm may also reach kidney. So deworming is very important before doing any gastrointestinal surgery. So that is all about this horror story, like for the pathogenicity of Ascaris lumbricoides. So these are the clinical features you see because of the migrating larva, allergic reaction, pneumonia, sputum, lungs, everything to do with the lungs, right? So migrating larva. In symptoms due to adult larva, mostly is because of the intestine, right? Ectopic ascariasis, wanderlust, spoliative action, toxic action, mechanical action, all this you will write in the exam, no doubt at all. Now we will move on to laboratory diagnosis. Just to give you a brief, the demonstration of the eggs in the stools, finding the larva in the sputum, finding an adult worm in the stool or the sputum. So you will do what and all examination, stool examination and sputum examination you will do. You can draw the eggs and all that and explain their morphology. Okay. In sputum you will find the charcot-laden crystals, blood-tinged sputum, etc. So how will you detect the adult worm? Adult worm can occasionally be detected in the stool or the sputum. By naked eye itself you can see this worm. Okay. So you will purgate the person and collect the stool and you can see. Standard stuff you write here. Serodiagnosis, antibodies, etc. you can detect by ELISA, indirect hemagglutination, immunofluorescence assay. Okay, all this you can do. You can also do blood test. Okay. For what? CBC you can do. Eosinophilia can be there, right? Eosinophilia can be there. Okay. So this is a very high level lab diagnosis. Coming to the treatment, mebendazole, pyrantel palmoate and albendazole actually are the drug of first line of drugs for nematodes. Look at the drugs here for nematodes: mebendazole, pyrantel palmoate, albendazole. For ascaris, for hookworm and for pinworm, these are the drugs: mebendazole, pyrantel palmoate and albendazole. Second choice will be piperazine and levamisole. Anyways, for the other types of nematodes, you have mebendazole, ivermectin, DEC, that is diethyl carbamazine, etc. Anyways, here we are focusing on ascaris, so you should know mebendazole, pyrantel palmoate and albendazole. Okay. That's it about Ascaris lumbricoides.